Hi there, my name is MC Yoda, and this is a simple to use and easy to make device that I like to put in every one of my bases and storage rooms. I like to use this device to break down all the blocks in Minecraft. For example, breaking down the ore blocks with your Fortune 3 pickaxe. But also this can be used to strip logs and make concrete, amongst many other things. Well, let me waste no time and show you how to build it. To build this device, you'll need a 3-block deep and 4-block wide space. I like to stick it in the corner of my storage rooms. And the materials you'll need are a crafting table, any leaf block, a water bucket, 2 chests, 1 redstone dust, 1 obsidian block, 1 redstone repeater, 1 redstone torch, and finally 1 dropper. This device is very accessible pretty early in the game. In fact, I would argue the hardest block to obtain in this whole setup is probably the obsidian block. So let's build it. First, we're going to stick a crafting table in the corner. Next to that, we're going to put our leaf block and we're going to waterlog it. Next to that, we're just going to put down a double chest. Now coming back over in front of the crafting table, we're going to stick a redstone dust on the floor, and then we're actually going to replace the next floor block with an obsidian. Then we're going to stick a redstone repeater looking towards the obsidian block, and a redstone torch right behind that to power it. And finally, we'll stick the dropper right here next to the redstone dust, facing this empty space. And that's it. The tutorial is done. That's how you build this device. Told you it was pretty simple. But now let's take a look at how to use it. The best thing about this device is you can use it to not only break down 1 stack of blocks, but you can break down up to 10 stacks of the same block. Alright, so let's see how to do it. First of all, take 1 stack of that block and put it in your offhand. You know, the slot where you would normally carry a shield. Then in the dropper, go ahead and load in all the rest of the stacks that you want to break down. Up to 9 more, of course. Then to use the device, we're simply going to stand in front of the dropper, but not on top of the obsidian block. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to right-click to place 1 block on top of that obsidian. And at this point, you're ready to go. So equip your pickaxe or whatever tool you're going to use to break down this block. And aim your cursor at the front of the block. Don't aim at the top of the block, because that's just going to place another block on top of it. You want to aim at the front of it such that you can't actually place a block, and once this block is broken, your cursor will be pointing at the obsidian underneath it. So once you're aiming here at the front of the block, just hold down your right mouse button as if you're trying to place another block, and keep that button held down. Now, hold down your left mouse button and start breaking the block. And as you can see what happens, you break the block and you immediately place a new block. And then that cycle will continue for as long as you want. And as you can see, while you're doing this, the dropper is continually filling up your inventory and putting a new block in your offhand. So you can now sit here with both mouse buttons held until every single block is gone through. Now, once the dropper has gone through all of its contents, you'll see that the stack in your offhand will actually start reducing in numbers now. So you can just continue going until that goes down to 0. And there you go, all done. Now, one thing about it is it will throw your items around on the floor a little bit, which is why I like to stick it in the corner of my base or my storage room. Because it's real quick, you just have to run around and grab all of those. Then you can just look at your crafting table and go ahead and craft all of those up into, in this case, coal blocks. And then throw all of your content into the double chest. Yep, it's that easy. Very easy to build and really simple to use. But like I said, this can be used for way more than just breaking down ore blocks with your fortune pick. You can use this to strip logs. It works exactly the same way. Load up however many logs you want into the dropper, put 1 stack in your offhand. Now, I will warn you, if you're using a very high efficiency axe, it will actually go too fast for this. So you might want to use a lower enchanted axe for this. So stand in front of the dispenser, use your right click to put your first log on the obsidian. Now pointing at the side, hold down your right click, which will also strip the log after it's placed. And now hold down your left click to break it. So as you can see, it places and strips the log before it breaks it with the axe. Now again, if you're using a very high efficiency axe, some of these will get broken before they're able to get stripped. So you want to use a mediocre axe to do this. And one thing I love about this, because of that waterlogged leaf block, you can even convert concrete powder into concrete. So the same thing, put however many concrete powders you want in the dropper, put 1 stack of the concrete powder in your offhand, stand in front of the dropper, place 1 on the obsidian, it immediately turns into hardened concrete. And then same thing, just aim at the side, hold down your right click, then hold down your left click. And the moment you place the powdered concrete, it will turn into solid concrete, and then your pick will mine it. And you can do this with as many stacks as you can fit in that dropper. And you can use this for pretty much any block that you can break down. For example, you could even break down bookshelves into books. You can use a Fortune 3 shovel to harvest flint out of gravel. And you can break down clay blocks into clay balls. Really, any block you can break down can be done like this. Now, have I convinced you that you need this in your base? Because I promise you, if you try it out, you're going to absolutely love it. So now at this point, if you just wanted the tutorial and the demonstration of how to use it, you can go ahead and quit the video now. Now, if you want to stick around for a few minutes, I'm going to explain how does it work. A detailed description of the redstone and game mechanics that makes this device work. First of all, every single block in this build is important. So let's explain why. First, we're going to start with the actual redstone components. Let's go over here and take a look. So the first thing this build needs is a redstone power source, and for that we're using a redstone torch. This could actually be a redstone block instead, but first of all, the torch is cheaper to make, and it just kind of looks better sitting there instead of a big chunky block. So I opt to use a redstone torch as the power source. Now the next redstone component is a redstone repeater. This serves a very important purpose. And one property of this redstone repeater is that whenever it is sending its power into any solid block, that block becomes strongly powered. And what that means is not only is this block being powered, like if this was a redstone device it would turn on, but being strongly powered means that it will also send the power out redstone dust that is on the other side. And this redstone dust being powered is what we're going to need to make the dropper work. So the reason why this is a redstone repeater, now this could also be a redstone comparator. In this purpose, a redstone comparator would do the exact same thing, but a redstone comparator is more expensive to make, so why not use a repeater instead? But one thing you can't use is simply redstone dust. Because while redstone dust does power this block, it is weakly powered, which means that this block is receiving power, but it's not strong enough to send it out the other side. And we need that to happen. So that's why this component is a redstone repeater. Okay, now, like I said, this dust is going to be used to power the dropper that's sitting next to it. And with this dropper completing the redstone circuit, this circuit is what's going to refill your inventory, which allows you to do more than 1 stack of blocks at a time. So this device would actually work without these redstone components, but you would only be able to do the stack that is in your offhand, and you would not have any way to refill it unless you stopped and manually refilled your offhand. But using the dispenser is what lets you do up to 9 more stacks. So as I demonstrated earlier, whenever you put a solid block here, that's actually going to make this redstone dust receive power. And since this redstone dust is also connected sideways to this dropper, it will power the dropper and activate it to let it shoot out 1 item. So you're going to see whenever I place the block that I'm going to break right here, that lights up, the dropper shoots 1 item out of it. And of course, if I was standing in front of it, which I will be when I'm using the machine, that would have gone into my inventory. Now the reason why I'm using redstone dust and a dropper instead of an observer is because I only need this dropper to trigger 1 time with each block that I place and break. So whenever I place the block, it triggers the dropper to shoot out 1 item. But whenever I break it, it does not trigger. If this was an observer, it would trigger once when you place the block and then again when you break it. And all that's going to do is put twice as many blocks into your inventory that you need, and that's going to make you stop midway to go dump all of them back into the dispenser. Okay, so that's the redstone component. Power source, redstone repeater, strongly powers the block that you place down, and that triggers the dropper to refill your inventory. Now let's talk about the obsidian block. Why is this necessary? The reason why you want this obsidian block is because the block underneath the one that you're breaking needs to be something that the tool you're using cannot easily break. So say for example your floor was made out of terracotta. If you tried to use this device with a terracotta floor, you're going to risk breaking that terracotta either in between blocks that you're trying to break or once they're done. And you don't want to punch holes in your floor. So instead, I like to put obsidian here because every single tool in the game, regardless of how well it's enchanted, will still take a little while to break through obsidian. So no matter how quickly you're breaking the blocks that you're placing down, this obsidian will stay intact. Now let me talk real quick about why we put the block that we're going to break down in our offhand and our tool in our on-hand. Well, first of all, that's just how the mechanics are going to work. Even if I were to do this over here and I place down one, it works the same way here. Okay? But there's an added benefit to that. Whenever a block goes into your inventory, like is coming from the dropper right here, if that same block is in your offhand and your offhand is not a full stack, that block will go into your offhand and not your hotbar. So that's why as you're breaking these down, you can see that my offhand goes down 1 when I place the block, but then it goes back up 1 whenever the dispenser dispenses a new block. I'm sorry, the dropper. And that's just a happy coincidence. That is actually what makes this thing work. Because if those were to go into your normal inventory or your hotbar, then you really could only do 1 stack at a time. Now, why do we have to place our cursor on the front of the block instead of the top of the block? Well, because if we placed it on the top of the block, this would happen. And this is not what we're trying to do because our inventory is not getting filled up and, well, that's just goofy. And one thing that's important whenever you're facing the side of the block is that when the block is removed, your cursor is now on that obsidian block and not on something else. Okay, now let's talk about the crafting table and the chests. These are important too. First of all, the chest can be used to store, well, it can store the tools that you're going to use when you're actually using this tool. Say you have a mediocre enchanted axe so that you can do the wood stripping, you got your Fortune 3 shovel, you could even have a hoe in here because if you've got a skulk farm, you can actually do this with skulk to say gain levels for enchanting or to like heal your armor and your elytra. I mean, like, how versatile is this thing, really? But really, the reason why I integrate the chest and the crafting table is that pretty much all the ore blocks that you break down can be formed into blocks to make them take up way less space. So you can use that crafting table to compact the size of the blocks you just mined out, and then you could stick them in here until you have time to go put them into your storage system proper. And now the last game mechanic I want to talk about is the waterlogged leaf block that turns your concrete powder into concrete. So let's talk about concrete powder mechanics real quick. So the way you use concrete powder is anytime it comes into contact with water, it will immediately turn into solid concrete. Like for example, you can just stick it in the middle of water and it will turn directly into solid concrete. Another thing that you can do that people often like to do is pillar up your concrete powder, dump a block of water on top, let it flow down, and again, it will turn all of that into solid concrete. But another mechanic with the water and the concrete is that the concrete can be placed next to the water and it will still turn into solid concrete like this. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be in the middle of it with it flowing all around it. It just has to be in contact with it. Okay, so the reason why we can't just put raw water in our build over here is it's going to spill everywhere and it's going to destroy all your redstone and make a complete mess out of your base. So instead, we have to use a waterloggable block. But you can't just use any waterloggable block. Like say, for example, you used a stairs. That's a waterloggable block. But even with a wall behind it and the chest next to it, a waterloggable block will spill water out onto your floor. And that pretty much nullifies almost every single waterloggable block in the game, except for a few. There are a couple blocks in the game that you can waterlog that will actually keep the water from spilling out everywhere. And those are copper grates, roots, and leaves. If you waterlog any of these blocks, the water will stay in place and not spill anywhere. In fact, it's not that they won't spill sideways, they won't even spill down. So you could waterlog a floating one of these blocks and that water will not spill out. Okay, so oh my gosh, if only copper would oxidize that fast normally. Okay, so why do I use the leaves over here instead of roots or the copper grate? Well, number one, the leaves are just easier to obtain. Pretty much every biome you're in is going to have trees, and all you need is 2 irons to make a shears to get one of these. For roots, you need to find a mangrove swamp, and copper grates, well, you need to go mine and smelt copper to make those. But that's not the only reason I use leaves. So when I was talking about the waterlogged blocks, like say for example the stairs, if we were to place the concrete powder next to those, see, they would still turn into concrete. But if we put concrete powder next to the waterlogged copper grate, the concrete powder does not detect the water through the grate and does not turn into solid concrete. And the same thing goes for the roots. If you place the concrete powder next to waterlogged roots, it will not turn into solid concrete. However, if you use leaves, the concrete powder does detect the water through the leaves and it does turn into solid concrete. Now, why they made that one particular mechanic work differently between leaves and these other 2 blocks, I have no idea. But since that's the way it works, that's why I use a leaf block. And these leaves can be anything. They don't have to be oak. They can be oak, birch, mangrove, jungle, whatever biome you're in or whatever leaf blocks you got laying around, any one of them will work. And one last thing, and this is completely optional, whenever I build this, if I'm far enough in the game that I have ender chests, I like to stick an ender chest right above this crafting table, just so that I can access things I might have stored in there. But again, that's totally optional. Well, now that you know all of the mechanics behind why this device works, it's going to be really easy for you to build in your own world. I truly believe that understanding how these things work is the first step in being able to build devices in Minecraft without just having to strictly follow a tutorial. So if you found this tutorial useful and if you think you might use this device in your base, I encourage you to drop a comment down below and let me know if you think I should continue doing this series. I have a whole host of ideas of other devices I can make tutorials on, and I would love to know if there is interest in me continuing these. And if you do build this in your world, please drop me a comment and let me know if you thought it was useful. Alright, well thanks for stopping by, and until next time, you take care of yourselves, okay? Bye-bye.